Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Epic Photography Podcast, sponsored by Platypod Tripods, the world's most compact tripod bases. My name is Peter Treadway, and joining me this week is none other than Mr. Dave Williams. Hey Dave, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thanks, mate. As you know, I am riding to Paris on my bike in a couple of days' time, in 2 days' time, in fact, which I'm a little bit nervous about. So that's now in a couple of days' time, but by the time this comes out, it will have been probably last week or so ago. But you're helping me on that, so I really appreciate that. You're going to be doing my support crewing for Jimmy and I, driving your van and helping us out with that, so really appreciate that. But what are you up to at the moment?
I'm going to be coming to Paris with you, obviously, support van, as you can see. But the difference is when you come back, I'm going to be staying in Europe for a couple of months. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so you're going to be staying in Europe. When we get to Paris, we're spending the night there, and then you're going to stay in Europe. But we're unfortunately getting back on the Eurostar the following day and coming home. So where are you now?
I'm in the van. Let me show you. It's easier if I show you. Let's go.
Where are you going? What on earth are you up to? Where are you though? That looks familiar.
What?
Oh, there you are! Look who it is, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, look, a microphone. It's like it was planned.
Almost. How did that happen?
That's a bit of magic.
Yeah. How you doing?
First time ever.
We're in the same room.
For a live, we'll call it live.
Live, let's call it live,
live podcast on the Epic Photography
Podcast.
Yeah.
And we don't need, I can close that because we don't need that. We don't need Zoom.
What do you think this is, 2022?
I know, what's that all about? How's things?
Yeah, good.
You're here.
You're going to Paris?
I am going to Paris,
Absolute maniac.
Yeah, a little bit. 190 miles in 24 hours. I'll be cycling it. You'll be driving it.
Yeah, it'll still be hard work.
Of course it will, yeah. That right foot on the accelerator is going to be...
It gets tedious.
I can imagine it does, yeah.
You get the old calf burn after a while.
You'll get calf burn.
And then I'll turn on the cruise control. Brilliant.
So what have you been up to recently?
I've been writing a book.
Of course,
I spoke about it with Kathy last week, actually.
You did,
It's the Eiffel Tower effect. Whoa.
What is the Eiffel
strange?
Tower effect? It is, yeah. Maybe we should get some behind-the-scenes photos while we're there.
Maybe we should. What an idea. All this stuff as if we planned it out and we actually haven't, but it looks like we have.
It's literally just happened.
Don't tell anyone. We'll make it look like we have.
Very serendipitous.
Indeed. Well, I'm going to ask you some questions about your office and stuff in a minute because it looks awesome, and I know you made this.
It took a while.
But
yeah.
you were asking what I'm up to. Well, I wrote a book called The Eiffel Tower Effect. It should be available now. If it's not, it's because I'm waiting to hear back from the Eiffel Tower.
From the Eiffel Tower, yeah.
Because the Eiffel Tower is copyrighted. Well, not the Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower at night is copyrighted. Not in general, but the light shows.
Mm.
So the image I've got for the cover, as long as it gets approved or I don't get sued, is the golden illumination, which basically the Eiffel Tower was built
1847 or something.
It was a long time ago.
It was for a World Expo in Paris.
In 1985, they decided to illuminate it, and the light shows, there are three. There's the beacon that spins at the top, there's the flashing lights, and then there's the golden illumination.
Yeah,
they're all copyrighted.
So for those that don't know, the general illuminations, as any kind of iconic landmark would have, but every hour after dusk, after sunset, every hour on the hour, the whole Eiffel Tower sparkles with a light show. So it's not just general illumination go on.
The lights that light it up,
they're copyrighted as well.
Art,
yeah,
by the French. You've got to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Considered art by the French, and we're not cutting that as well.
That's saying it.
Yeah. So I mean, it's crazy. I don't know. Maybe some of our readers. We'll get to that.
We do need to discuss that, actually.
Maybe some of our readers can cut in and tell me if I'm wrong. But I've not heard of anyone actually being sued.
I haven't. But I do remember a story a couple of years ago.
I don't want to be the first.
No, well, this is the thing, yeah. I do remember a story a couple of years ago, and I'm sure it was France, where they've got some fairly stringent copyright laws. but not in favour of
What
photographers.
So we've got.
So wasn't there a thing with like landscapes and cityscapes that if you included a building,
Yeah.
you
So
had to get
got
permission.
something called, what's it called? Something panorama, which means when
Yeah.
you're out in a public place and you're taking a panoramic photo,
Yeah,
if there's copyright stuff in it, it's not the subject,
yeah.
then it doesn't matter. But in France, that panorama, I can't remember what it's called, but something panorama, they don't have that. So
Yeah.
if there's something copyrighted in your photo, you cannot use it commercially, no matter whether it's the subject or not.
So it could just appear in like the bottom right corner.
Yeah.
and
Copyright.
Copyright.
Speaking
Can't
of
sell it.
subject and feature, that's one of the topics or one of the lessons in the book, The Eiffel Tower Effect. idavewilliams.com to learn more. You might even get a sample chapter if you sign up to my mailing list.
Shameless plug.
What?
Hashtag.
So, why are you riding to Paris?
Well, as you know, and as our dear readers probably know, I am very much into my cycling. I've been into cycling probably for about 5 years. Got big into it again during lockdown, the pandemic. Obviously, we couldn't go anywhere. We were allowed our mandated 1 hour of exercise, or one period of exercise a day. And I thought, well, I can't do anything else. I may as well go out on the bike, and really got back into it. I then built my own, it's sat right there in fact, my own carbon fibre bike from scratch using cheap Chinese carbon fibre parts all bought from AliExpress.
Perfect.
And I just got hooked basically. And so my neighbour Jimmy and I, Jimmy is just an absolute monster. He's a beast. He thinks nothing of getting up in the morning and just going for a marathon. He'll run 26 miles just for the hell of it, for the fun. But he's got into cycling as well, and so he has always wanted to do London to Paris. I did it 4 or 5 years ago, but wanted to do it again. So it's one of those situations where we were sat down having a beer. Oh, would it be nice to happen? And you start looking at, start making
Stupid
plans.
idea becomes real.
Exactly. Oh, well, we could do it this day, and then before you know it, everything's booked. So yeah, 190 miles.
Yeah. Overnight on the ferry, sleeping on the floor.
Yeah. But it's actually
all
going to
that
be
good
more.
stuff.
It's actually going to be more than that, because we're riding. So we're in Essex right now, in the heart of the beautiful Essex countryside in Stansted, near the airport. We're riding from here to the start line in London. So that's already another 35 miles. And then from there, it's 190 miles. But also, after planning it, and I think I was explaining this to you last night, after planning the ride, a good friend of mine got in touch. He runs, I won't bore you with the details, but he runs a cycling collective, a cycling community, to try and get more ethnic diversity into cycling. Basically just get everybody involved in cycling, as many people as possible. He's been asked by DHB, or a huge cycling clothing brand, to put a team together for a testimonial exhibition ride at the Olympic Velodrome.
Right.
He contacted me to say, would you be part of the team? I said, yeah, that sounds great. He said, it's a money can't buy experience. You know, there'll be world champion, European champions there. You get to meet all these people. It'll be a crazy experience.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm there. When is it? 24th of June.
Right.
The morning that I'm
same
riding
day.
to Paris. So Jimmy and I are now riding from here, Essex, to the Olympic Park. I'm going to do a track event where I'll be trying to ride as fast as I can around a track, and then hopefully I'll have enough legs after that to get to London and then do 190 miles
Right.
to Paris.
Well, good luck with that. I'll have snacks. If you need
Thank you.
if
A few
need
bananas.
snacks. Yeah.
That's what we need.
I'll probably need some of them though. So.
Yeah, don't eat all of them.
So, how about so you're talking about a hobby. You've got a hobby. Photography is a hobby for so many people.
Absolutely.
And obviously for us, it started out as a hobby. In fact, why don't we enlighten people, the dear readers? What happened there? Because I've been into photography since I was 14.
So, for me, I came into it a lot later, as you well know. So we became friends. I think you had like a Sony Alpha 3.
60 something.
Oh, right.
100,
Yeah. And it was like a bridge camera. It didn't have detachable lenses.
It wasn't a bridge.
I'm sure you had a bridge.
It was proper. I did have a bridge. It was a Nikon. I barely
Oh, that
used
was
it.
perhaps the one that I borrowed.
Nikon
That's
P something.
Here's what happened. I saw the photos Dave was taking with his camera, and I thought, the camera takes the pictures. I'll ask him if I can borrow that camera to take on holiday with me. Dave said, I don't really trust you enough to take my big camera. Have this Nikon bridge camera. So I took that away with me. That was good fun. And then I sort of got bitten by the bug. And so I came back from there. And you and I then, I bought a baby Nikon DSLR. It was a D3000, I think it was. And we used to just go out in London.
We used to go out and walk along the river and
it wasn't just London, actually.
practice taking long exposures by the river and figure out how that works, because we had no idea.
And I remember it was genuine, like proper amateur.
We did modelling photos, taking pictures of
Oh,
each
no,
other.
I've still got some of those. We'll have to put those.
No, we're not.
We'll have to put those pictures up.
No, we're not.
But I remember it was we were trying to do long exposures of
the water, making it
and
smooth.
on the Hungerford Bridge doing car light trails. And it just wasn't working for us. We couldn't figure out the whole exposure triangle of where kind of the shutter should be with the ISO and the aperture. And we went and sat down and we were on our phones and we were outside the Royal Festival Hall. And I remember we sat desperately Googling. We eventually got it, but we would spend hours along the south bank of the Thames. We would fill our cards up because at that we'd probably only use it like two
Take
gig
a flash for some reason.
I think we had like 2 gig cards or something, which was like massive for us then. So we'd get about 50 pictures on it. We'd go to. I remember we went to a cheeky Nando's along Queen's Walk.
Yep.
We'd empty our cards onto the laptop. We'd sit and do a bit of editing while we ate. We'd empty the cards and then we'd go back out and we'd carry on again. Once the sun had gone down, that's where the flashes came in. We'd try and take moody, like split light picture. Well, not that we knew what split light was in those days. It was just let's use the flashes. So yeah, it was a real kind of labour of love. Yeah, it was.
It was great fun, and that's photography as a hobby is great fun. You don't have to be making money from it like we are.
And it's
the thing about photography that annoys me though, because and this is another thing in the book. I'm honestly not plugging the book, but it's in the book.
Available in all good stockists.
Amazon, Etsy. It's in a few places if you want the ebook. Anyway, photography. Anyone can say they're a photographer. You don't. There's really no limit on what a photographer is, and I've likened it to you are a camera owner.
Yeah.
Like, what is it that actually makes you a photographer? You don't get that anywhere else. You don't get anyone picking up a spanner and saying they're a plumber. They can say, I can fix a tap, but they won't say they're a plumber. Whereas someone will pick up a camera and say they're a photographer. It's really weird. I can't get my head around exactly why that is, because it doesn't happen anywhere else. But as well as being an annoying thing, it's a good thing because it's an awesome hobby. It's a great thing to get into. It's like we spent hours down by the river figuring out how stuff worked. No idea, but it's funny because looking back, those pictures are terrible. But at the time, how impressed were we?
Absolutely. And so I've spoken about this before on a previous. I think it was with Kathy and Stephanie talking about wedding photography. And I won't name the person. You know who it is. The very first wedding that we did was a colleague of ours. And when again. I look back at those pictures now, and I'm sure you do, and they, to my mind, they are a world away from the kind of the fully polished professional product that I give now. Yeah. But if you speak to the groom, he absolutely loves them. I
take it you're talking about the second wedding we did, because the first one's divorced.
Yes. No, I'm talking about the first one.
Oh, okay.
The very first one at the hotel.
Before that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which
we were second shooting, weren't we? Were we second shooting?
No, that was the second wedding.
Oh,
it was too long ago. It was like 2009.
So if you want to be a wedding
13
photographer,
years ago.
If you want to be a wedding photographer, you should second shoot, which is why I'm getting confused, because we second shot,
shooted,
second and third. We were helping photograph a wedding.
So the first one,
even that, I was so impressed with my pictures, but I look at them now and they suck.
I can't remember now which was the first one we did, but we did one in a hotel in London, and that was just the two of us for the whole day.
The one with a Lionel Richie guy.
Yeah, that was that the first one we ever did, because we were just doing the evening on that. So, and that's another thing. So we probably went about it the wrong way, to be honest. And I think I've spoken about this before. The best way to get into wedding photography is to second shoot for an established photographer.
Yeah, someone you can learn from, someone who's going to guide you, and someone who is doing so well themselves that it doesn't matter if you screw up because you're still learning. Yeah, basically.
That's the way to do it. Yeah. What we did, and it sounds awful. It's like do as I say, not as I do, because it did work out for us. And I'm still shooting weddings now. Obviously, you've gone on to be successful in travel and all other areas.
No thanks to the weddings.
it was your stepping stone.
Maybe we'll come back to that.
Yeah. But how we started was just saying, well, we won't charge anything to a friend. Or actually, the friend said, would you shoot a wedding?
It was the other way around, but the same sentiment.
But I remember in the very beginning, I did not want to shoot weddings.
Yeah.
I remember you coming to me and saying, we need to make money.
Yeah.
Photography,
I
as we all
I
know,
want a new camera.
as we all know, it's a massively expensive hobby. And you said to me, we need to make money. And I completely agreed. And you were like, how about weddings? And I was like, biggest day of people's lives. You know, it's so much pressure riding on that. No, it'll be fine. And then this guy that we work with came to see me. He's like, look, I've seen your photos online. I've seen you posting stuff on Facebook. Was it MySpace? Were we posting
Google
stuff on there? Or was
Plus,
it, yeah,
Flickr. Definitely Flickr.
It was Flickr. And he said, look, I've seen your stuff. I really like it. Would you be willing to shoot a wedding? And I was like, I don't know. Funnily enough, Dave's mentioned that. Whose wedding is it? And he's like, well, actually, it's mine. I don't know. All right, let's think about it. So we sat down with him. The two of us sat down with him and his bride to be. Had a chat through them, and this is what we did do, right? We were completely upfront, and we said, look, we have never shot a wedding before.
Yeah. We know how the camera works. We're camera owners.
Exactly. we weren't photographers at that point. We can take pictures, but we've never shot a wedding before. And the bride was a little more hesitant than the groom was.
Yeah,
but she was like, yeah, absolutely, because everyone knows it's the bride's day.
Yeah.
But we shot the wedding, and again, these are the photos that I'm talking about. I look back on them now, and I cringe. But you speak to the groom, and he still absolutely loves them because
that's the memory of the day.
They are professional photos.
It's not just about the photo; it's about when he looks at it, it takes him back to that.
Absolutely,
place, that time.
Because there might be a picture, and I always use Great Aunt Maud, but there might be a picture of Great Aunt Maud sat in the corner, and she's now unfortunately, shuffled off this mortal coil. It evokes memories and stuff from the day. But yeah, so the way we got into photography was by just going out and shooting it for ourselves, but being completely upfront about it.
And just trying to have some fun in the meantime as well.
And
thinking we can do this,
yeah.
But then having perhaps that was the extrovert, and inside of us there was something going on. Maybe I don't know. Probably I don't know. I
think you definitely had the confidence more than I was very hesitant, but just because from a screwing up point of view, there was no way I wanted to ruin someone's big day like that. But ultimately, if you're confident in your skills, if you know how to use a camera, I think the most important thing about shooting weddings is not getting stressed. And I know that that sounds a bit obtuse. But when the brown stuff hits the whirly thing, don't suddenly go to pieces. You think, okay, if you know your camera enough and if you know what you're doing, you can just take 5 seconds, take a deep breath, and say, right, okay, what's gone wrong here? How do I fix this?
Yeah,
and move forward. If you start losing it, that's when but things start going mega wrong.
There are other non-psychological factors that affect your psychology when you're shooting a wedding, because it's such hard work, as we always said, and you continue to say, it is a portrait shoot at 100 miles an hour for 12 hours.
Yeah.
And everything is important. Every moment is important. You can't afford to miss it. And when you have that in your mind, combined with sore feet, sore legs, you're too hot, you're too cold, whatever it is, there's so many factors involved physically that combine with the psychology that causes the stress. And for me, although there's good money in wedding photography, there's good money in wedding anything. You put the word wedding,
put a wedding before it, and the price quadruples.
Yeah, but although there's good money in it, it just wasn't doing it for me. I had the reason I'm into photography is because from a young age I was looking at the National Geographics and all atlases of the world and looking at encyclopedias and seeing amazing pictures of places and places that I wanted to see and that I wanted to shoot. And so shooting a wedding has absolutely nothing to do with that whatsoever.
It was a good stepping stone, I think, for you, because again, it
in the business of photography,
absolutely, and it did give us some money, and it's not the right rate, as Dave said. It's not the reason to go into wedding photography, although there is money involved, isn't the money. So I still shoot weddings now, and I absolutely love weddings. To the point where, and I think you need to be like this. Like, I'll be listening to the best man speech, and maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I'll be listening to the best man speech to the point where I feel so invested in the day that I'm stood there
Joining in, taking pictures.
but laughing along and then thinking, I should be taking pictures of this. Or many a time I've been listening to the father of the bride tell a beautiful story about his little girl growing up, and Dave laughs at me
forgetting to take pictures,
and I'm shedding a tear, and I'm thinking, but I think you need to have that investment in the day.
Yeah, definitely.
To because it comes across in the photos. If you're just there thinking, I'll take a shot of this, take a shot of that looks pretty good, it really comes across in the photos. And I hate using the word passion because I think it's used so much these days. I'm passionate about this, but you really do have to have a passion for capturing people, to have that human interest, to want to capture those moments.
Yeah.
And it isn't for everyone.
It's wedding. So one thing that we all have so when we're not a camera owner, when we are a photographer, one gift that we all have is the art of telling a story and the ability to tell a story through a series of photos or through one photo. And that is the essence of wedding photography.
Yeah.
You're capturing these moments that tell a story, because although the couple want to see the pictures and the couple's family and everyone that was at the wedding wants to see the photos, when you go, you use sim imaging, don't you? When you go to sim imaging and print off a proper, nice, flat lay, lovely bound wedding album, in 50 years, someone else that wasn't at the wedding is going to be blowing the dust off and opening it up and having a look and seeing what the family was up to that day. Yeah. So they're going to read the story.
Yep. That's actually one of my bugbears. So I when I put my albums together, and even when I put my wedding galleries together, so once I've edited all the photos, I then put them into an online gallery. I use Zenfolio, put them into an online gallery, and Kathy Bateson and I shoot weddings together, and I've shot weddings with Stephanie before, and when you and I shot weddings, obviously you're using a multitude of cameras, and as much as the best laid plans of mice and men is that you will sync those camera clocks up so that all the pictures will order, it doesn't happen. And so I will painstakingly sit, and sometimes it has taken me like a full day, a full 6-7 hour day, to move individual images around from memory as to where they were on there. And some of these images are just like detail shots of something, but I need to remember where they are and put them in an exact chronological order of how the day flows, because for me that's really important. And I've seen, I think it's really disappointing, I've seen wedding photographers before where they just upload all of the photos in a real haphazard, and so you start off and there's a picture of the couple dancing at the end of the night, and then the next thing is the bride getting her makeup done. Exactly, with his tie wrapped around his head, and then the next picture is the ceremony, and then there's another picture of something later on in the day. And it just, if I was a groom looking through those pictures, it would just feel really disjointed, and you lose that emotional connection, which is what wedding photography is all about. It's about, as you say, it's about capturing emotion and telling. Reportage is wedding photography. So that's a real big bugbear of mine, and I won't say happily, because sometimes it does take quite a while, but I will purposely sit and order those photos so when the couple do look at them, and in the album as well, as you say, in 50 years time, when your granddaughter, great grandson, whoever finds that dusty old album of Nan and Grandad in the loft, they can live that day again. I think that's really important.
Storytelling is
absolute story is king.
But as I say, it's not just wedding photography. It's being a photographer and having that skill to take it off. One of the biggest things is with travel photography, and I say this every time someone asks me about travel photography, or whenever I start a class or a talk or anything, whenever I'm presenting anything to educate people about travel photography, I always say it's unique because it doesn't have a subject. There's no subject of, like when you take a portrait, that genre has a subject. It's a person, good light. Food photo is the plate
pictures
of food.
Product photography is a watch, jewelry, rings. Yeah, they've all got.
Everything's got a subject, but travel photography doesn't have a subject. It's more about telling the story and evoking feelings, because your job as a travel photographer, if you're going to sell your images, is to make somebody want to be there, because your clients are the destination guides,
travel magazines,
travel agents, all the people that
travel companies.
Their goal is to make someone want to be there. So your job as a travel photographer is to evoke those feelings. Maybe, I know it sounds weird. Every time I say it, I know it sounds weird, but involving other senses, which is possible through the good use of composition, and like depth through the picture, having a story, having everything just right, especially when it comes to color theory. evoking other senses, like making somebody think they can hear it or smell the food or whatever it may be.
That's interesting.
Because it is all about telling a story. It's making
Yeah, yeah.
somebody want to be there, and it is the big divider between the photographer and the camera owner. If a camera owner, like we were, wants to go and shoot a wedding like we did,
Yeah.
then there isn't much hope for them. It's gonna eventually get to somewhere, because there's another thing. Art isn't really something you're born with. It's something you learn. And I know that's a divisive thing as well, but I truly believe you can learn art.
I think I think you're right in saying that you're not born with it. I think it's something that can be nurtured from a very young age, though. It's not necessarily something you have to wait until...
Even so, that's practicing it. And learning how to do it. That's not... You're not born with it.
No, you're not born with the eye.
There's that Stephen... I don't know, what's his name? There's a autistic lad who had the ability to draw the whole of London. Went up in a helicopter. Stephen...
I can't remember his name.
It might be Wiltshire. Stephen Wiltshire.
I do remember. And he just looked at it
He's
for
born
5
with it.
minutes.
He's the one in a million.
Yeah.
Everyone else, you learn how to be creative. You learn... but even actually, having said that, what he was doing was technical. It was scientific. He was remembering distances and locations and things relative to each other.
Yeah, I guess, but that's where art and science meet, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, that's interesting, because so when we go back on our journey then as photographers, and we're standing at the South Bank taking pictures with a flash of long exposure, because that's what we did, because we were idiots, we're learning how to do it, and we're learning how to be creative. So there's no barriers. If someone wants to be a photographer and convert from camera owner, it's possible, but it's more about the dedication and it's
just practice
and the time you put into it. And the resources. There's lots of resources out there. Us, for example, the Epic Photography Podcast. Oh, no, honestly, if you're I know we basically just having conversations with each other, but every now and then you can pull out a right good nugget of wisdom.
Well, that just reminds me, actually, because we ran a couple of educational photo walks again in London along the South Bank, and it was always quite interesting for me, because although we were there as the teachers or as the trainers, when you're sitting in the round with people and you're having a discussion, there is always something that you will pick up from them, and so you should never go into a situation thinking, "Oh, well, I know all it. I know everything there is. I know about there is to know about this." So always go in with an open mind. And actually, I remember Scott Kelby once said, "You're an absolute fool if you go into a situation thinking no one can teach me anything about this." He's like, if you were to sit down, this is Scott Kelby talking. If you were to sit down with Joe McNally and say to Joe, I've learned this fantastic technique or this fantastic method, it's going to get you incredible photos. Is Joe McNally, as amazing as Joe McNally is he going to sit there and say, "No, it's all right, I think I know everything"? He's not. He's gonna be like, "Well, tell me what it is."
Yeah. Having spent quite a bit of time with Joe McNally myself, I know that is absolutely true. He doesn't. Everyone thinks he knows everything. He doesn't think he knows everything. And that is a reference to Hertzberg steps. Have you heard of Hertzberg steps?
No, I haven't actually.
It's really interesting. So those people that think they're amazing at something and they suck at it.
Well, so that's like the Dunning-Kruger.
That's the bottom
effect
of the 4 steps of Hertzberg.
Right.
Steps.
Okay.
So you are confident, but you have no competence.
Ability. Yeah.
The next step up is slight improvement, and you go up. You're weighing off confidence and competence all the way until you get to the top. But the top isn't competence and confidence. It's competence with a lack of confidence. Yeah. It's the Joe McNally.
Yeah.
Like, he's amazing, but he doesn't believe it, or he doesn't think it.
Yeah.
He's not arrogant about it.
And
which is really interesting.
It is, and that is absolutely the way you should be going into your photography. And again, going back to how we were in weddings, when we shot weddings, we went in knowing full well that we didn't know everything. But we told people that. We went in and we said, "Look, this isn't."
We were honest.
We're not professionals at this. We'd like to be professionals, but we're not professionals at this.
I think we promised that we'd get the first kiss,
and I think we just about managed to do that.
Everything else was an extra. That was a bonus.
Actually, I wrote an article on this a few years ago for Scott's blog, Scott Kelby's blog.
Yeah.
Basically saying that you don't need the greatest equipment in the world. It's never about. It's never. I wouldn't say it's never about the camera. There are, again, I say in the blog, there are a certain number of or types of pictures.
I mean, there's things you have to have, but yeah.
For instance, if you're shooting like high-end architecture, you're probably going to want a tilt shift lens.
You're going to want a really good tripod.
And you might want a few decent flashes as well to light up some areas of a building, whatever you're doing. But for the majority of photos you want to take, you can take with a basic camera. And it was I likened it back to when we started photography. I started out shooting weddings. I'd only been holding a camera in anger for 6 months when we started out. I had a D3000 baby DSLR. I had a 70 to 200mm lens.
Yep. You had the Nikon one. I had the Tamron.
No, I had the No. Sorry, it wasn't even. No, it was
Sigma.
It was 28. It was a 28 to 300.
There was something you had that made me jealous. I can't remember because you had the Nikon thing, and I had the. Tamron.
It was. Well, eventually I bought the 70 to 200. Yeah, the Nikon.
We're doing it. We're proving our own point right now. Actually, stop it.
And then you bought the.
Everyone stay cool. The gel
Don't
definitely
move,
didn't
don't breathe,
fall off.
don't make a sound.
No, we're going to carry on.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll walk through it. So I had a baby DSLR. I had a 28 to 300mm Sigma. It wasn't even a Sigma.
To 6.3,
I don't know what it was. It was.
Like that.
I think it was a Tamron or anyway, whatever it was. It was a really
Yeah.
low quality lens.
Yeah.
And no
Zoomed
flash.
in really far. Then.
Yeah, exactly. And if you moved away from people, you got really great bokeh.
Yeah.
But I had no flash, and so when I would tell established photographers, and I keep doing bunny ears, and I should stop that. But when I would tell established photographers that I was shooting weddings and this is the kit I was using, oh, you'll never get great photos with that. You shouldn't be shooting weddings. You can't call yourself a photographer.
Yeah.
And they were right. But not because of the equipment I was using, but because I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so rather than, and again, our good friend Alan Hess once said, before deciding to upgrade your kit, make sure first that you don't need to upgrade your knowledge.
Yeah.
Because training is cheaper than kit, and it lasts a hell of a lot longer.
Yeah, definitely.
And so when I went back, when I went away, and that's when we found Scott Kelby's digital photography books, which we still to this day call our Bibles.
Yeah.
I found those, and I just massively buried my head in those. And then the next wedding we shot, I think I bought a £40 budget flash. But that wasn't what made the photos. What made the photos is that I now knew
how the flash worked,
and how to use the camera properly, and where to stand, and how to use available light, and how to
don't cut off the limbs
exactly.
Don't cut off the joints
exactly.
Don't shoot a bride from below because it makes her into a superhero, and that's ridiculous. All that stuff that we had no idea, but that's where the education comes in. But instead, we had gear acquisition syndrome. We had gas. And
we
but
still
that's something
have gas.
we all have. Every photographer has it.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing, but knowing the limits and knowing when you're suffering gas and where you should be updating your learning and training is huge.
Yeah.
Because that is the thing that made the difference. We could, I mean, I don't want to, but we could go and shoot a wedding right now with a basic camera.
Absolutely. Well, and funnily enough, on the point of that blog that I wrote for Scott was I wanted to shoot something. I wanted to write a blog to prove that you could shoot pretty much any type of shot that you wanted to shoot with just basic kit. And so I decided to shoot. I had a beautiful Audi car at the time, and I decided, right, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get some really lovely automotive shots of my car. And I used, in fairness, the camera I used, it was a Nikon D810, so it was a full frame. It was a 24 to 70mm lens, so it was a full frame professional lens. But the point was that I was using the lens at f10, and any camera body and any lens you will be able to use. You could buy a budget £200 camera with a kit lens that you will be able to shoot at f10. There's no boundary to that whatsoever. And all I had was a Yongnuo. Whatever happened to them? Yongnuo
YN3 something
50.
Yeah.
Which was, I mean, it was great at the time.
We've probably still got them. We've got gas.
It was, and you can't sell anything.
They're here somewhere.
And it was an off-camera flash that again I put in a very cheap newer
Niwa.
Is it Niwa? Is that how you say it? Okay, Niwa, sort of 24-inch softbox. I think the flash and the softbox in total cost me maybe £60 or £70 total for the two of them. And so I took some photos and I set the camera up on a tripod and I put the light above one side of my car, took a picture, took a light above the other side of my car, took a picture, and then I put the two of them together and used layer masks and stuff in Photoshop to make this beautiful low-key image of my car. But the whole point of that was the most difficult part of the process was Photoshop. And it's because I'd learnt about Photoshop, because I'd upgraded my knowledge, that I knew, well, actually, I don't need all this. I don't need 100 lights around the car to get the shot that I want.
You just need to know how to use the one light and move it around.
Exactly.
That's what Tim Wallace does. Tim Wallace, probably the world's best automotive photographer.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
One light, loads of pictures. Keep moving the light around.
I didn't realise he only used one.
Most of the time, there's a light.
Yeah.
So he'll light part of the background, then another part of the background.
Right,
Nothing moves apart from the light.
And then he'll just layer mask it all.
Yeah.
In
essentially,
Photoshop.
I mean, his process now, being so good at it, is there's a bit more to it than that. But essentially, what's happening is he's just moving the light and bounce cards and blocking out light and all that sort of. It's all to do with moving the light. Everything else stays still. Loads and loads of pictures, and then deals with it all in post in Adobe Photoshop.
Well, that's quite interesting because, as you know, I used to be, and I still am to a certain degree, into architectural photography, and there's a lot of that in that as well. So there are very few architectural photos that are shot purely with natural light now.
None of the skies are real.
And so there's a guy that I follow called Mike Kelly, an American very successful architectural photographer. And I don't know whether he coined the phrase, but he heavily uses the phrase a flamboyant exposure. So it's an exposure with ambient available light and a flash just to complement. So you might be using that beautiful kind of golden hour sunlight coming through the window, but that is leaving a shadow. Exactly, that's leaving a shadow over here. But it will be multiple exposures, which are then all blended together. So again, it goes back to, you don't need loads of expensive equipment. You need to know how to use Photoshop or Lightroom. Upgrade your knowledge, guys. Again, as I said earlier, it's
turns you from a camera owner into a
photographer. Exactly. And don't let people tell you, this is an important thing, don't let people tell you that, because you get purists out there. Oh, well, if it's not straight out of camera, or if you have to Photoshop it, nah, sorry mate, that's not a real picture. Complete rubbish. Every photo from every major photographer that you walk down the street, you see newspapers, magazines, you see posters, you see a bus go by with an advert on it. Every single one of those photos has been retouched to some degree. And I remember, so my brother still is a photographer. He's 8 years older than me. So back when I was 11, 12 years old, he was just starting out as a jobbing photographer. And at that time, the new thing in photography was autofocus.
Right.
Lenses coming out with autofocus. And he was getting old established photographers with the fag hanging outside. Oh no, mate, no, unless you're focusing yourself, unless you're manually focusing, no, you're not a proper photographer. And look where we are now, 20 years later, 30 years later.
We're doing it again now. We're moving from DSLR to mirrorless. The future keeps happening. I'm pretty sure we're going to move from mirrorless to just phones.
Yep.
But there's another point on retouching, straight out of camera. The most powerful tool that we have as a photographer in post-production, and I'm going to stand solidly by this, is cropping.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to be a better crop. You can never crop tight enough on a good subject. Whenever you think you've cropped enough, you could probably crop a bit more. Playing with your image by using the crop tool, which people do with their phones all the time as well. When you take a picture on your phone, people quite often adjust it before they post it to Instagram. And I'm not talking about photographers. I'm talking about camera owners in this case. Everyone does it. So straight out of camera and having all this purist stuff, it's really, it bugs me. I know there's going to be some readers.
We'll get to that in a minute. There's
going to be some readers that are going to argue with us on this, or that are going to not like what we're saying about purism. But even more so than that, the image that comes out of your camera isn't pure, ever. What is happening with all the processing that your camera itself does to the image?
Algorithms and all sorts
especially if you don't shoot RAW. If you shoot... Well, there's two arguments on this. If you shoot RAW, then you have to retouch it. You have to, to make it look right. If you don't, your camera's making a JPEG. Your camera
It's making all the decisions for you.
Averaging the color, and it's averaging the light, and it's retouching your picture. Just take it. Just a quick example of how that works. When you take a photo on your DSLR or your mirrorless, when you look at the preview screen after you've taken the picture, what it's showing you is not the raw picture. It's showing you the JPEG. It's very, very, very quickly edited that picture to make it look like what it thinks, because the algorithm's in the camera.
Yeah, adds a bit of sharpness, a bit of contrast,
what it
vibrance,
thinks you want
a
it
bit
to
of
look like.
saturation. Yeah, absolutely.
And it shows you that.
Just gives
So
you
these
an average.
purists, you can all...
Tell them from us.
Yeah.
But just funnily enough, just going back to what you were saying about cropping.
Yeah.
I think, am I right in saying, I think I'm right in saying it was Henri Cartier-Bresson that coined the decisive moment thing. You take the photo at the decisive moment.
Yes. Yeah.
So I watched, and it may have been at the photography show a good few years ago, I watched a talk with someone, and I can't remember who it was, but they used one of Cartier-Bresson's images, and it's a very famous image of a guy jumping across a puddle, and it's a black and white image, and it's fairly blurry. But Henri Cartier-Bresson is the one coming out and say, decisive moment, take the photo, just take the one photo and make sure that's the moment that you wanted to capture.
Yeah.
And it shows you this image, and it's a very tightly cropped image. And then the guy who was giving this talk went on to show you what the photo looked like when it came out of the camera.
Yeah.
And it was much larger than that. And all around the edges were all of Cartier-Bresson's notes and annotations to his retoucher on what to do to the image.
Google lots of famous old, film photos, black and white photos. Google a famous photo and then add the word retouching, and you'll see all the manual stuff, dodging and burning. It all comes from that.
Comes from the darkroom. Absolutely,
it all comes from there.
Yeah.
And another thing on that note about taking interesting pictures is it's another Joe McNally, but I think it was Joe McNally's editor for a book or for a project. If you want to take more interesting photos, you've got to stand in front of more interesting subjects.
Absolutely.
So the decisive moment, the interesting stuff, it all plays into itself. But we've got the freedom now that we don't have to pay to process the films. We've got as many exposures as the battery or the memory card can give us. Everything else is kind of free. I mean, it all goes into the cloud. The cloud, as we know, is someone else's computer, so there's limits there, but there's nowhere near the limits we had when we had a 24 or 36 roll of film. And then your ISO is whatever the film's ISO is. And if it's got a certain color cast, tough, that's the color cast. You can't do anything about it. Now we can do everything. We've got the freedom to do so much more than we used to be able to, even since we first picked up cameras.
Yep, massively. Which
is nearly... So as I say, I was 14, but properly, when I properly got into it, I think it's about nearly 15 years ago.
Yeah. For me, it was definitely 2009 because it was just after I met my wife.
It was the megapixel race.
It was.
Basically,
because it went from... I think my first camera was
1.3.
My first camera, it was like 6. Mine was 6 megapixels, and then the next camera I got was 12.
Yeah.
And then I got the D700, which was 24, and I was like, "Whoa, 24! My eyes are going to bleed. It's going to be so sharp."
Whereas now I'm like, no, I don't want lots of megapixels. I'm not interested.
Just going back to that quote, the Joe McNally quote of, "If you want to take more interesting pictures, stand in front of more interesting things," reminded me of, and I can't remember whether it was Rick Salmon or Dave Black that said. He would sit for hours to try and take a particular photo, and he would get the photo and he'd show it to someone and they'd say, "Oh man, you got really lucky with that photo." And he was like, "Do you know what? Yeah, I did get lucky because I keep going out every time. And the more I go out, the luckier I get."
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to what we were saying earlier about practicing. The more you go out and practice, the luckier you will get with your shots.
Yeah,
you're not going to get lucky with shots if you're going out once a week or once a month, and the rest of the time you're just sat looking at your computer thinking, "I wish I had better photos." You need to get out there, practice,
I don't want to blow that old trumpet again, but there's a whole section in a brand new book that's out now, The Eiffel Tower Effect.
Eiffel Tower Effect. Available at all good stockists.
Yeah, so
Amazon.
But there's a whole section about it because it is such an important factor in photography. You're not lucky. You create your own luck.
Yeah.
The quote is that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity.
Absolutely.
And so if you prepare enough, you practice enough, and you hone your skills, and then you go and find the opportunity, then that's luck.
And it doesn't have to be that difficult as well. And so a good friend of mine, Adam Ridley, I think who you know, Adam, old colleague of ours, has recently started a YouTube channel called Downtime Photography. And it's all about, he's massively into his photography as well, but he has a full-time job. He's getting married next year, but he's in a long-term relationship. He's got children. He's got a dog. And so he was like, how do I get out and find time to do photography? And so he came up with this concept before he even thought of the YouTube channel, came up with this concept of downtime photography. So he'd be, well, I'm taking the dog out for a walk. I'll take the camera with me. I'm out for 45 minutes, an hour,
See if I
every
can
single
find
day.
something. Yeah.
I'll just take the camera out with me and push myself. And it's almost like a 365
Yeah.
project where you just have to go out every day and find something to photograph on a particular subject. He's not limited himself to that. So then he started this YouTube channel of, well, if I'm interested in this, other people, it
Yeah,
might be
definitely.
helpful for other people.
It's what the Photography Daily podcast is based on.
Okay.
Go for a walk, take your camera.
Yes.
Talk,
Yeah,
talk
absolutely.
at the same time.
Yeah.
It's the same
Talk
thing.
about what you see
Yeah.
and just
So
use
it-
your camera.
It also relates to something I do when I'm traveling. I'll set myself a challenge, so I'll pick a location and say I need 5 pictures. They don't need to be amazing, but I need 5 pictures within 50 meters of this spot, and I'll find them one way or another. There's no theme, there's no whatever. I need 5 pictures, and then I'll find 5 and move on. And I don't publish this or anything like.
It's
nothing
just for
comes
your
out
own.
of it. I think I showed it in one of my YouTube videos on
Okay.
the Due North series.
Yeah.
But nothing comes out of it apart from practice.
Yeah, yeah.
I need 5 pictures. Like we could be sitting here right now.
What am I
5
going
pictures.
to
What have I
take
got?
photos of?
Well, the geometry on that and putting that in the frame exactly like it is, that works. So there's one. I could get one of you with the
beautiful
back-
angles of my bike. You could take
Yeah.
that, the cheap Chinese carbon fibre of my bike.
The
The sound diffusion
I
panels.
was
You
going
could
to
probably
say
get
there's so
an
many
interesting
things
abstract.
with the lights the way they are, especially on the shelves behind you with some macro stuff.
Yeah.
But doing that is a great way to practice because there's no pressure on you.
No.
I just want 5 pictures. You don't even need you could just pick up your phone and use the camera
Yeah,
phone.
yeah, absolutely.
You don't need anything crazy to be able to do it. So camera owners versus photographers. You're going to Paris. I think we've discussed
I think
quite
we've
a
covered
lot.
it. I hope that wasn't too round. I mean, this has been more of a kind of
Shall I go back to the van?
this has been more of a just kind of a two old boys sat down chatting. But
Yeah.
hopefully, there's been some useful stuff in there.
Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity.
I think that is
Hertzberg steps. Make sure you're competent if you're going to be confident. What else did we cover?
upgrade your knowledge before you upgrade your kit.
Cheers, Alan.
And that was a good one from Alan.
And if you want to be a wedding photographer, make sure you want to be a wedding photographer.
Yeah, don't.
It's a big
Well,
deal.
mate,
It's a big deal.
Start out wanting to do it for the money, but don't continue doing it for the money if you don't enjoy
definitely.
it, because you will not enjoy it, and
100%.
you won't enjoy the pictures that you make either.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, dear reader. Oh, we never got time to.
I haven't got time.
We,
No,
we
we haven't
I
got time.
promise. I
Next
promise.
time.
I will explain why I quit. And it's a very long and drawn out story, but I will get to why.
I'm curious. To
Why
hear.
I call you all readers. But dear readers, thank you very much for joining us again. I just want to say thank you again to our epic photography sponsor, Platypod, who make the world's most compact tripods. I'm not sure who's up next week, but make
idea.
sure to tune back in, because it will be another immensely interesting and fact-filled episode of the.
And if people want to see how you got on in Paris, what's
yes.
your photography? What's your cycling account?
Peter Treadway Cycling. I've said before, if you enjoy watching a 40-year-old man in tight lycra, go and have a look.
Awesome. Well, that's it then.
Nothing more to be
Nice
said on
one.
there. Good to see you, old boy.
You too.
And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.